everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. Today I'm painting another character from Monster Slaughter by Ankama Games. This is currently on Kickstarter, so I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go and check it out if you're interested. The Kickstarter is down to a number of hours now, so this is the last model I'm going to have time to paint before the Kickstarter's over, and you'll have to wait until all the copies are delivered and you can join in the fun of painting these little guys. So I must apologise straight away for this video. I do think this wolf comes out a little bit lower quality than normal of my models, but you know, like a lot of you, I am a new painter as well. I'm trying to teach you guys how to get into the hobby, and I can show you how to do it wrong as well. I do try and correct it, so hopefully it's not too bad by the end, and I'll try and point out the mistakes I make as I go along. So I'm going to start off with Ultramarine Blue. This is by Vallejo, and sticking to the artwork, I could see he had a blue hoodie and he's a grey wolf. That's about as much as you get from the artwork. So I'm painting his hoodie blue. I'm doing his jeans in blue as well. That's just because I'm using the colour, game colour by Vallejo, and that works as a primer and the base coat. So I've not primed this model. I'm going to be using Vallejo's paints to do that, and I don't have the grey that I want to paint his jeans in this range. So I'm just priming it with this blue so I can paint over it later. Next up, Stonewall Grey, and that's for the wolf's fur. So I'd just like to point out the first mistake I'm making here is that I'm trying to get this out in time for the Kickstarter before it ends, and I'm rushing. So I thought I'd try and do this model as fast as I could, knowing there's only a couple of days left and my time is a little bit pushed at the moment. So first thing is try not to rush for a Kickstarter if you want to paint a model well. So that was just kept catching all of his fur, his hands, his face, both his legs, and his massive tail at the back. So the next colour, we're going to use White Primer by Vallejo, and this is mainly, I'm just using it for the wheels of the skateboard, but again I am using it as a primer for the rest of the skateboard because I'm going to use Army Painter's colours, which aren't recommended for using as a primer really. I'm just painting around the edge of that the base because I'll do that in black by the Army Painter later on. And as promised, it is now later on and we're doing that black. So Dead Black by the Army Painter. I'm using my detail brush here to paint the top of the board. That's the grip tape that runs along the skateboard. I'm just using the smaller brush just to be extra careful not to paint any black on the fur that I've already painted. And that's just because the black's quite difficult to paint back over if I make any mistakes, and the smaller brush helps not do that. Next I'm using Livery Green. So the underside of the skateboard, no idea what colour that would be. So you can do whatever you want, and I decided the bottom of my skateboard would be this bright green, as it's one of my favourite colours by Vallejo and I don't often get to use it, so I thought I'd bust it out here. Nice neon green. I'm going to take a little bit more Dead Black, and I'm going to be applying that just to the wolf's nose and his lips as well, because I think wolves, dogs have quite black lips sometimes, probably, yeah. And I'm going to do around his eyes as well, just to make them stand out a little more aggressively. Looks quite cartoony at the moment, but that will tidy up as we move on. Necromancer Cloak is out, and that's by the Army Painter. I'm back to my detail regiment brush here, and I'm going to be painting in his jeans just to give some sort of contrast to the hoodie that I painted in blue. I mean, I think you could leave it green as well if you want him to look like he's busted out a tracksuit. That could be a look in itself, but I've gone for grey jeans and a blue hoodie. Claymore Blade by the Army Painter. That's the silver I'm choosing here, and I'm going to be painting the bearings of the wheels and the trucks underneath the skateboard. Oh yes, if you watch a lot of my videos, I may not know the words for medieval weapons, but I know my skateboards. I'm also going to be doing the ribs or rails, whichever you prefer, along the bottom of the skateboard, and then he's got a little cool little skater chain across his jeans there. So far it's 26 minutes, as I mentioned. One mistake, I'm doing this very, very quickly. I did want to show you the times though, because I think that's important for how the model ends up as it does. I'm going to take Survivor Shader, and this is to do the shading now. So that was 26 minutes for the base coat. We're going to do a little shade, and I'm going to apply the Survivor Shader all over the model. Now, I did actually get out my blue tone as well, and I did consider doing the hoodie in blue at this point, but I thought, you know what, let's go as fast as I can and show you what you can achieve in very little time. So 29 minutes, and that's the base coat and the shading now complete. And we're on to the highlighting. So I'm taking back out Ultramarine Blue. I'm going to start highlighting up the hoodie, and I'm going to be painting quite thick. When I say thick, I always mean wide lines. Sorry, I should distinguish between the two words more often. I'm just trying to get all the raised areas and just painting enough of this blue that we can paint another highlight on top. Now, this is the second mistake I'd say I've made here, and that's using this black shader all over this model, and I think the contrast is too strong on the hoodie by the end, and you can see it's sort of black and blue. Now, some people might like that effect. I don't particularly mind it. I think it's fine, and it does make for painting a model very, very fast. So just bear with us as we tidy it up anyway. We're going to be doing a second highlight. That's ultramarine blue and wolf grey, both by Vallejo, and that's 2 to 1, so 66% of the ultramarine. And we're going to be going around with the detail brush and just catching the very edges of all those folds in this hoodie, sort of his elbow and the creases in his hood and down his back, and both his pockets that are on the front of the hoodie that you can just make out in this prototype model. I've not mentioned, but it is still a prototype model, and this one was by far one of the worst prototypes. Unfortunately, it had a lot of bumps and misprints or sort of thing on it. Necromancer's cloak's out, and that's just to highlight back up those jeans that I painted in. So basically painting most of the colour back in here. The shader didn't change it significantly, so I'm just leaving some of that black shade in the recesses. After that, I'm going to mix in a little bit more wolf grey, so 33% wolf grey, 2 to 1, and that's going to be to highlight up the raised parts of the jeans, so sort of his knees. He's got a rip in his jean where his tail comes out, and the cuffs around the bottom of his jeans as well, just to give it a little bit of pop on the table. We're going to use Babe Blonde by the Army Painter, and using the detail brush. He's got massive eyes. I think you could probably get some really, really great looking eyes if you're going to spend the time on them with this model, because they've got a lot of space to work in. We're going to use Wolf Grey here, and that's to start highlighting up the wolf's skin. So we're just applying this generously to all of the raised parts. I'm starting with his face, getting some on his neck, on his forehead there. And just to remind you, I'm now using Wolf Grey. I think that's important that I keep repeating that I am using the wrong grey. So this is the third mistake, unfortunately, I made. I had 2 greys next to me, still Wolf Grey. This should be Stonewall Grey. So this is where it all started going horribly wrong for me. It's still Wolf Grey. I don't realise I've used the wrong paint, I'm afraid, and I just thought, this is looking weird, but it often does when I start the highlighting. And this is the point where I notice and think, well, I've committed now, so I'm going to highlight up the whole model generously with this wolf grey and all the raised parts, and then I'm going to try and fix it after that. So let's see what I do. So I'll just take this opportunity for the hoodie. Check out Cam. That's a completely different way of doing the hoodie, where I don't just use a load of shade, and I think his hoodie looks fantastic by the end. If you like how this hoodie looks, just do it. It's so quick. With a skin. And check out the other with the fur. Sorry, check out the other 2 wolves if you haven't done. Both of those were painted in different colours, and I think look pretty good by the end. So, and this is going to be a third way of doing it, but I wouldn't do it this way because this is mainly me doing it wrong and then spending most of my time fixing it. So apologies for that, but I thought maybe it's useful for everybody to see. So after that, I've gone back to Livery Green, and I'm going to be painting up the edge of the skateboard. This was mainly just a little break for me to cheer myself back up after making those mistakes. So I've mixed up some Stonewall Grey now with Glaze Medium, both by Vallejo, and I've made myself a little glaze like a wash, and I'm going to try and apply this. It's only about 10% of the actual colour, so it's very, very watery, and I'm going to apply it with a cheap brush because I don't trust that this isn't going to damage my brush, and then I'm going to apply it basically to all of his fur. It's going to take quite a while, and I'm going to try and make sure it doesn't pool in any of the shaded areas too badly, because it's similar to the wash and it's going to do the reverse, hopefully. And so blend the colours back together. It's going to make it a little bit more stone grey, so it's going to darken the lighter areas and hopefully lighten some of the darker areas. I don't think the darker areas were wrong before, but unfortunately because I picked the wrong blue and turned it very, very bright and a completely different shade of grey. Sorry, I picked a blue. I picked the wrong grey. So while that's drying, I'm going to very carefully carry on with the model, just try and get this out before the Kickstarter ends. And I'm going to paint his pupils in with Dead Black. I'm also going to use what Dead Black I poured out to do the first coat on the rim of the base, as I've done with all the other werewolves. And then I'm going to take a little bit of white primer, just a little dot in both pupils to give some reflection of light. I'm going to paint in some teeth for him, and then I'm going to just highlight up those wheels back on his skateboard. So I'm going to do a couple of strokes across the top of the first 2 that catch the most light, and then around the rim of all 4 of them. I'm also going to choose to paint his nails bright white as well. This wolf's unfortunately missing his middle finger. It's one of the unfortunate downsides of painting prototypes. They're very easy to break. I don't know where his finger is, and it never arrived. So obviously spending too much time on prototypes is a little disheartening when they're already broken some of the time, but I wanted you guys to see in advance what you could do. So Claymore Blade, that's just to highlight back up those bearings and the chain on his jeans. I'm going to use turquoise to highlight, just to colour, to base coat his base. And I'm just going to do the top, and this is just to make him more easily recognisable as a werewolf when we're playing the game. So the next bit I missed filming, apologies for that, and that's just going to take a white primer and dry brush that on top of all his fur just to lighten him up and just try and blend it a little bit better. And I turned him into quite a light wolf by the end. He is light in the artwork, he's the lightest of them all, so I'm not too disappointed with that. I think I rescued his fur reasonably well. If you're not happy with it, go and check out the other two wolves, they might suit you better. And if you don't like his hoodie, as I said, I think Cam's hoodie is a lot better, but this was very quick in comparison, so swings and roundabouts. You'll have to let me know in the comments below if you can. I did think about just scrapping this and deleting it. Should I have done that? Is it nice to see my mistakes and how I might try and correct it? Let me know what you think. Don't forget the Kickstarter ends in a number of hours, so check that out if you haven't, and thank you all very much for watching.